making an IHOP day.
Decided on June 16th that something had to be sacrificed. She chose to sacrifice her child to live the life that she wanted.
They gave you 2 weeks of testimony that was completely irrelevant and served only one purpose, and that was to paint Casey Anthony as a slut, as a party girl, as a girl who lies, and has absolutely nothing to do with how Kaylee died.
I don't care that it's a holiday weekend. Everywhere you went this weekend, the talk was about the legal drama in the Casey Anthony trial. Prosecutors will get the final word with jurors when they offer their rebuttal in just about an hour and a half at 9 o'clock this morning, and then the case is going to go to the jury, probably sometime mid-afternoon. So what's going through the jury's mind? Where does this all wind up? To weigh in, Janet Johnson with Janet Johnson Law and attorney John Phillips. Welcome back to both of you. So I guess the fundamental questions. Did the prosecution prove its case? Do we know how Kaylee definitively died? Did Baez raise enough reasonable doubt that the jury cannot come back with a verdict? Janet?
Yeah, I think he did, and I think that he's in a better position today than he thought. The only downside is the jury got to sleep overnight on his last words, and then they'll only hear today from the state. It's an advantage for them.
All right, and that's what you said to me, John, off air. You said, all right, the rebuttal's coming. What do you think that the state is going to do that's going to just blow the jury's mind?
I was tweeting last night, and I said, has the opportunity. They need to kind of bait the judge into having overnight to dissect the closing arguments by Baez and go through it and hit those points. This is the time when most people are, the dichotomy of opinion is going to be the greatest. The defense just finished, the state's done its job. I think there are jurors right now in the camps of both, and it's how strong those jurors are and whether they can convince the others.
Okay, before I wrap this up, I'm going to come back to my initial question, and I'm going to put you both in the jurors' seats and ask what you think. We'll do that in a second. But I've got to ask you about the jury's deliberations and how they're going to go ahead and play out. There's going to be peer pressure. They're going to get hostile. It's a holiday weekend. They're tired of being sequestered. They want to get back to their families. They want to get back to their lives. John, how does that play into the decision they ultimately reap?
This is a case where deliberation could be potentially long. I know there's one juror that has a vacation on July 7th, and they surely want to go on that. But it just depends on how much dynamite's going to be needed to sway one or the other as to whether you get a verdict quick or not. I really don't anticipate a quick verdict because I think there's going to be sides on each camp that are
acrimony. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure. Janet?
I disagree. I think that they've banded together. They've been together for 6 weeks. They've probably formed an alliance, and they know if they come back with a first-degree murder, they then have to decide life or death. I think they've decided they want to go home, and I think that the state hasn't given them enough to keep them longer.
Now, Casey decided that she wasn't going to testify, and the judge admonished the jury that that cannot be a consideration. Still, that said, you know, these are human beings, and they're going to sit there and they're going to render their own opinions. Is that an elephant in the courtroom?
I don't think it is. When you pick a jury, you ask the jurors, are you going to hold it against them, even though the Constitution says that she doesn't have to speak for herself. And most jurors are proud to say, we're going to afford the defendant the constitutional right not to testify.
John?
There's so much lying going on in that courtroom. I think the jury knows that if they had gotten her up there, she would have said exactly what her defense attorney said. It's been amazing how much perjury is going on. I thought it was funny yesterday when the judge actually deferred to Casey's mother on a point of how old she was in a demonstrative aid. I'm like, wow, Judge, you know this lady committed perjury on the stand, and yet you're going to defer to her. I don't think it will matter in this.
Not at all costs, Belvin Perry was doing what he could to avoid this case going to appeals. Is it going to no matter what?
If she gets first-degree murder, it is. There's an automatic appeal. And if she gets anything, I think, less than 30 years, maybe she walks away. But, yeah, I think there's an appeal no matter what. There's so much evidence and so many decisions he had to make. Something's going to look funny to the defense.
John?
I agree. And some of the objections, Judge Perry has sustained the objection or gone, just not gone that extra step of instructing the jury not to disregard that. There was a piece of evidence yesterday, a closing argument yesterday, that the judge said we sustained the objection. A juror took notes according to Headline News, and the judge didn't say disregard, and sometimes you got to take that extra step.
I think we'll get into the jury's heads when we see how much they come back to the court and say, we need clarification on this, we need explanations on this. All right, let's bring this full circle. Go back to my initial question. You two are not lawyers, but you're jurors, impartial jurors. You've heard the 6 weeks of testimony, you've heard the closing arguments, you've heard the rebuttal. Did the state prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt? Or did Baez create enough doubt? You're a jury, you have to weigh in on her guilt or not guilt.
At this point, I'd say not guilt, because I think that if you listened to the state's close, you thought, yeah, you know what, that sounds reasonable. That could be what happened. But when you listened to Baez and Cheney, you thought, yeah, that could be reasonable too. That could be what happened. That's the definition of reasonable doubt. Both sides are reasonable. That's a toss-up, and that's not guilty.
John?
The advantage of going last and having jurors with a fresh head is going to be in the state's favor, I believe. I'm going to be blogging about it today, and I have a feeling that if I were the juror, I would convict her of capital murder.
And I think it's going to be Wednesday-ish before we know would be a safe bet. Counselors, thanks very much for your perspective.
My pleasure.
We'll be talking again. Meantime, the 4th of July is filled with holiday fun, barbecues, and fireworks. But for a lot of kids, it's a dangerous day of underage drinking. Coming up, what a new federal report tells us about